My escape pod drifted for 6 hours before a rescue ship found me. I remember the silence most of all. No alarms, no voices on the comm, just the soft hum of the pod's air system and my own breathing, which sounded too loud in that small space. When the rescue crew opened the hatch, I did not feel like a fleet speaker anymore. I felt like a man who had made a very large mistake and had to explain it to people who trusted him. The debrief room on the home station was cold and bright. 6 senior officers sat across from me. I told them everything: the false transponder, the hidden weapons, the way the ship had moved as if distance meant nothing to it, the way it had let most of my fleet leave, but had not shown me the same mercy until the very end. One officer, an older woman named Director Kelsa, listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked only one question. Did they want to destroy your fleet, or did they want to teach it something? I did not have an answer that day, but the question stayed with me for a long time. In the weeks after, the coalition tried to understand what had happened. We studied every scrap of sensor data from the battle. We compared notes with other species who had encountered humans before. What we found did not comfort me. Humans, it turned out, rarely fought the way we expected. They did not send fleets to announce themselves. They sent quiet ships, ordinary-looking ships, and only showed their true strength when they had no other choice. Some officers called this dishonest. Others called it careful. I began to think it was simply how a young, cautious species learned to survive among older, stronger neighbors. I was given a new assignment 3 months later. Not a combat command, a diplomatic one. Director Kelsa requested me personally, which surprised everyone, including me. You survived an engagement with a human warship, she said, when I asked why. That makes you one of the few people in this sector who understands, even a little, how they think. I want you on the team that tries to talk to them, not the team that tries to fight them again. I did not feel qualified. I still do not, but I agreed, because the alternative was to sit at a desk and think about the Vren's discretion for the rest of my career, and I did not want that. The meeting was arranged through a neutral trade station near the edge of contested space, the same region where my ambush had failed so badly. I found this location unsettling, but Director Kelsa said it was chosen on purpose. The humans wanted to talk in the same place where they had shown their strength. I think she was right when she said this was not an accident. Humans, I was learning, rarely did anything by accident. We arrived aboard a small diplomatic shuttle, unarmed, with a crew of 5. I stood near the observation window as we approached the station, and my hands would not stay still. I kept thinking about the way that survey ship had turned into something else in less than a second. The human delegation arrived not long after us. Their ship was ordinary-looking, much like the one from the ambush, and I felt my whole body tense when I saw it. But nothing happened. No weapons appeared. No hidden systems woke up. It was simply a transport, carrying people who wanted to talk. Their lead negotiator was a woman named Captain Elena Reyes. She was shorter than me, with dark hair pulled back and a calm expression that did not match the stories I had heard about her species. She greeted me with a simple nod and a hand extended for me to shake, which I had read about but never done myself. Her grip was firm, but not aggressive. "Fleet Speaker Oskatha," she said. "I read the reports on the Koresh 9 engagement." "So did I said, "many times." She almost smiled at that. "I was not on that ship," she said, "but I know the captain who was. She told me something I think you should hear. She said your fleet fought well, given what you knew. The problem was never your skill. It was that you did not know what you were facing."
I did not know how to respond to this. It was not the apology I expected, but it was not an insult either.
It felt honest, and honesty was not something I had prepared myself for. We sat down at a long table in the station's meeting hall, our 2 delegations facing each other. Director Kelsa opened the talks with careful words about peace and understanding between our peoples. Captain Reyes listened politely, then said something that surprised everyone in the room. "We are not here to make you feel small," she said. "We are here because hiding what our ships can do, forever, is not a good strategy either. Fear without understanding just leads to more ambushes, more losses, on both sides. We would rather you know what you are dealing with, so no one has to find out the hard way again." I thought of the 12 ships I had lost. I thought of the crews who did not walk away from that battle, and how none of us had understood, until it was far too late, what kind of vessel we were facing. If we had known earlier, would we have avoided that fight completely? I believed we would have. Why show us this power at all? I asked. Why not simply stay hidden, and let us believe you are weak? Captain Reyes considered this for a moment. Because weakness invites more ambushes, not fewer, she said. If you believed our ships were truly just survey vessels, more commanders like you would have tried the same plan. Eventually, someone would have pushed too far, and the response would have been worse, for everyone. We decided it was better to show you the truth once, clearly, and then talk, instead of letting the guessing continue. I found myself, unexpectedly, agreeing with her. Over the following weeks, the talks continued. I was not the lead of our delegation, but I attended every session, and I began to notice patterns in how the humans discussed their own technology. They were not boastful about it. They rarely mentioned specific numbers or capabilities, unless directly asked, and even then, their answers were careful, almost cautious. It was nothing like the stories some of my colleagues told, stories that painted humans as reckless or eager to show off their strength. One evening, after a long session, Captain Reyes and I found ourselves alone in the station's observation lounge, both of us watching the stars through the wide window. I decided to ask her something that had been bothering me since the day I woke up in that escape pod. "Why did you let me go?" I asked. "You could have destroyed my ship completely. You let 11 others leave, but you chased mine to the end. Then, at the last moment, I survived. Was that intentional?" She was quiet for a while before answering. "The ship's systems are built to disable, not destroy, whenever possible," she said. "Your flagship's shields failed in a way that looked, on our sensors, like a full loss of the vessel. Our crew stopped firing the moment your ship stopped responding as a threat. We did not know you had escaped until later reports confirmed it. I am glad you did." I studied her face, trying to see if this was simply a diplomatic answer, something crafted to make me feel better. But her expression did not look practiced. It looked like she meant it. "Many people in my fleet did not survive that day," I said quietly. "I know," she said, "and I am sorry for that. War is never something to be proud of, even when one side wins clearly. My hope, and the hope of my commanders, is that showing our full strength once will prevent 100 smaller conflicts later. I understand if that is a difficult trade to accept." I did not have a response ready. Grief and understanding do not always arrive at the same time, and that evening, I only had room for the grief. As the weeks passed, the talks slowly shifted from tense negotiation to something closer to genuine cooperation. Both sides agreed to share limited information about ship identification, so that future encounters would not repeat the confusion that led to the battle at Koresh 9. Humans agreed to mark certain vessel classes with subtle, verifiable signals, visible only to Allied scanners, so that other species would know when they were dealing with a ship built for serious combat, even if it looked ordinary on the surface. In exchange, the coalition agreed to share our own hidden fleet protocols, something my superiors resisted at first, but eventually accepted as a fair trade. I was asked to help design part of this new signal system, since I had first-hand experience with how dangerous the confusion could be. It was strange, sitting in a room with human engineers, discussing sensor technology instead of weapons, laughing occasionally at small misunderstandings between our two languages. I found myself, more than once, forgetting that these were the same people whose ship had ended my career as a war commander in less than a minute. Near the end of the talks, Captain Reyes invited me aboard her ship, the same class of vessel that had defeated my fleet, though a different individual ship entirely. I hesitated before accepting. Old fear does not disappear simply because talks are going well. But I agreed, mostly because I wanted to see, with my own eyes, what had nearly ended my life. The ship's outer shell looked exactly as unremarkable as I remembered from the battle reports, plain and practical. Nothing like the sleek, aggressive designs favored by coalition warships. Inside, the corridors were narrow and efficient, filled with quiet activity. Crew members nodded politely as we passed, without the formal stiffness I expected from a military vessel. Captain Reyes led me to a lower deck, where the ship's outer plating mechanisms were partially open for maintenance. I could see, for the first time, the layered systems that allowed the hull to shift its appearance and function, transforming from a simple civilian shell into something built for battle. It was intricate, elegant even, and I understood, looking at it, why my sensors had been fooled so completely that day. "This technology is not something we developed quickly," she said, noticing my interest. "It took many years, many failures. We built it because our history taught us that appearing harmless sometimes saves more lives than appearing strong. But we also learned that hiding the truth forever creates more danger than it prevents. That is why we are here now, talking with you, instead of simply hiding again." I nodded slowly, finally beginning to understand the strange balance her people seemed to walk between caution and honesty. Before I left the ship, she asked if I had any final questions. I thought for a long moment, and then asked the one thing that had never quite left my mind. "If we had known what your ship truly was, that day at Koresh 9, would you have preferred that we simply left without a fight?" She smiled, a small, tired smile. "Every single time," she said, "a fight avoided is always a better outcome than a fight won. We do not enjoy these battles, Fleet Speaker. We simply prepare for them, because the alternative, being unprepared, is far worse." I returned to the coalition station with a very different understanding than the one I carried before the talks began. I had entered this mission believing I needed to learn how to defeat humans, or at least how to avoid losing to them again. Instead, I learned something more useful. I learned how to avoid the kind of misunderstanding that leads to unnecessary loss in the first place. Director Kelsa reviewed my final report with careful attention. When she finished reading, she looked up at me with an expression I had not seen from her before, something close to quiet approval. "You went in as a defeated commander," she said, "and you came back as someone who understands the enemy better than any of us. That is worth more than any battle you could have won. I am no longer the commander who built an ambush at Koresh 9. That version of myself made a costly mistake, one that I will carry with me for the rest of my career. But I have become something else now, a bridge between two very different ways of thinking about strength, caution, and survival. I do not know if this new role will prevent every future conflict between our peoples. I suspect it will not. But I believe, more than I did before, that understanding an enemy is often more valuable than defeating one. The last thing Captain Reyes told me, before I left her ship that day, stays with me even now. She said her people had a simple saying, one used often among their fleet commanders. It was this: strength hidden with care prevents more harm than strength shown with pride. I did not fully understand it the first time I heard it, but after everything that happened, after the battle, the talks, and the slow, careful rebuilding of trust between our two peoples, I finally do.